Hi, everyone, and welcome to First Impressions, the ad tech unboxing video series that we've put together to really work with people who are creating the services, the technology that publishers need to one, survive and thrive in all the things that are kind of going on. And I'm really particularly excited about this particular session, in part because I can't go a day without a discussion around data, how to use data, how publishers need to evolve their models around data, data. And a company that is obviously focused very much so on data is Switchboard, and Michael, the CTO. Michael, can you talk a little bit about Switchboard? Give us the quick overview of what Switchboard is about.
Yeah, happy to, Rob. It's great to be here, by the way. Yeah, so Switchboard is essentially a data operations platform. It's a platform that really is focused on scale, managing data at scale, and providing trust and monitoring. That's the core aspect of Switchboard. And we work with a lot of publishers, a lot of ad tech companies, because that's a core need of those companies, and that really informs what's going on going forward. But that's the essential goal of Switchboard.
Great. I think there are a couple pieces that I want to dive into in terms of the, all those elements. But what are you known for? Like, again, obviously, I think this is one of those things where obviously you're out in market, but there's a piece of that where, again, I think you guys have a really good reputation around some things that you're really good at. So go ahead and brag, Michael. Go ahead and tell us what you think what you're good at.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't mind, I can talk a little bit about where we started and how we got to what we're
I
good
love
at.
it. Yeah.
So before Switchboard, my co-founder GK Queck and I worked at Google, and we helped launch Google BigQuery, which is a large, data analytics, data warehouse, columnar data store. Like it's similar to Snowflake or other things
Oh
like
yeah.
that. And we'd go out to market, and we worked with a lot of publishers. Obviously, it's Google, right? We'd work with publishers, and we'd say, "Hey, we've got this great analytics tool. You can use it." And everyone said, "That's wonderful. How do I get my data into it?" And we realized, and a lot of people came to this realization, right? There's a gap in the market there. And so that seems easy, right? Get my data into the data warehouse, but it's not, like, especially at scale. And what I mean by scale is like billions of impressions a day sometimes with some of our large publishers, all the intricacies of management and monitoring, and then times, 50. You might have SSPs, you might have performance marketing data, et cetera. So what Switchboard's known for is managing data at scale, because that's where we started. That's our core bread and butter. And along with that, and we can talk a little bit about these details, it's the monitoring, the governance, the credential management. There's a whole world of things that go into that. And that's what our main focus is.
Got it. Got it. I'm gonna make this joke first time only because you inspired it, which is so what you were saying is that you can lead a horse to a data lake, but you can't. All right, we're gonna have to work on that. We're gonna
Yeah,
work on it, but there's
I got
something there. There's something there. Okay. All right, got it. But I love the framing of this kind of data operations piece, right? Allows it to kind of, again, there's obviously just the idea of collecting data, but really getting that data into a format, into a place by which you could start to actually get the insights out of that data and so forth. And that I feel like that's kind of what you're leaning to. Can you talk through a couple of examples? And by the way, again, first impressions, the people who watch this, they love demos. So at any point you want to throw up a screen and show us something, happy to see it. So
Yeah, absolutely.
talk through a couple things that you're thinking about on that front.
Yeah, why don't I just talk about sort of where we focus our application, then I can jump into the application and show that. But briefly, like, I think what I see with publishers, whether you're huge or small, is that oftentimes you get into problems with data quality. So like we go out of our way to work on data quality. What do I mean by that? Data needs to be on time. It has to be trustworthy. It has to match what you expect. You need to know when things are broken. And when I mean broken, I mean everything. It's not just like my revenue is changing. Was my data late? Did I get double that day? Is something going on with the API, right? There's a million things to do. Those are usually the realm of like a data engineering person, right? So
Yeah.
we bake a lot of that into our platform. In some ways, our platform is what your data engineers don't want to do. Like they should be working on AI and impression, like all this stuff, right? That's what they should be working on. But what we do is we put all those things into a box to help them so they can go work on other things. So what we focus on in our app, our core app, and I'll flip over to the demo now, are things related to that. I mean, we have other analytics tools, which I'll show you afterwards, but it's really about data trust. It's all about trust. I sometimes call us a trust engine. So let me flip over to a
I,
demo account. You can
I
take a
like that.
look.
Yeah. Well, and as you do that, I will share that I literally had a situation this week
Mhm.
where we had someone pull a report and tell us that this was the picture and it was grim and it was dire and a lot of things were going wrong, and then they were like, sorry, the data had not updated when we pulled the report. And
Yeah.
so again, if you don't build it to factor in that data does not show up where you want it to be every time you want that, there's a factor of, again, like if you are helping with that, that certainly means people are making the right decisions with the right data.
Mhm.
And I think that that's a critical thing. So please dive in.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, this is a demo account for Switchboard, but as you can see, we're managing things that you work with in the ad tech world. Of course, you have something like Google AdX, operative log level impressions, but there's other things we manage too, like Google Analytics. We can do custom reports. The point is, we're monitoring all of those data sources in real time, and Switchboard can do everything you could imagine with the data, right? We can schedule things to refresh for the last 7 days. We can schedule things for certain times. We can run things at certain times of the month or week. All of that's configurable in our system. But what's really cool about Switchboard is we're always monitoring things all the time. I didn't mention this, and this is not something you see in the platform, but behind the scenes, we're doing a lot of smart stuff. Like we're scaling if we need. This happens all the time when you may go move from Google AdX API pulls, which are small, to log level files, which really a lot of people have trouble with. In fact, that was the first use case we started working with, is Google Campaign Manager and Google Ad Manager log files for some of our larger customers. That's a
Right.
real beast if you've never worked with that stuff before, like just like schema changes and size and like scaling up servers and just the processing. So we spent a lot of time on that. So behind the scenes, you get a big file. You don't have to do anything. The system just goes, okay, cool, and it just scales up and just eats it up and works with it. The other thing before I jump into this is we don't have our own data store. So we work with the customer's data warehouse. That's one thing we're different at. So not only are we managing, ingesting, governing all of this large data, but we put that data and organize it into the customer's data warehouse. We don't have our own silo because that's what customers are trying to do, right?
That's fascinating. Hold on. I just want, so again, like, yeah, so some of the advantages there, right? Of course, is that I am housing my data, and then again, you're giving and helping giving it that structure. And again, like using, uh, let's, I mean, I'm gonna make a very obvious statement. There aren't enough data scientists just sitting around idle in any one publisher's office doing nothing to sit there and tackle some of the things that you just laid out. But I
Mhm.
do want my data where I want my data. In fact, that's it's probably one of the issues that a lot of publishers run into is like, great, I could work with this service, but I got to move all the data over to them while I'm doing something with the data over here.
Yes.
I can kind of keep my data one place. I can start to work on just that aspect of it. And then you're
Mhm.
going to work on top of that. Again, please, Michael, if I'm incorrectly defining something here, please correct me on that.
No,
So
you
that
got it
sounds
right.
to me like that has some real pros to it.
Yeah.
Um,
There's
please.
yeah, there so if I could maybe say it a different way to what you just said,
Yeah.
you have a lot of systems in ad tech that are you grab data from, say, a source. Let's say Google AdX, right? That's a common one.
Yeah.
Google Ad Manager. You put it into the system, whatever that system is, and then there's an export to the data warehouse of like some aggregate version of that. We flip that around with Switchboard. So what we do is we grab all the data and we structure it in a data warehouse. I can actually show you. This is a demo of, say, BigQuery. That's a common one people use. They might
Hmm.
use Snowflake. So don't worry too much about the details. This is just demo data, but basically this is where the data gets stored, and you can see that we're structuring it in a sensible way. All of your data is there. We have additional reports. That's what we do first. And any of our analytics sits actually on top of this. Why? Because we want the most granular usable data in the data warehouse for all the things you just said. And the other kind of cool thing about Switchboard is we work with companies with multiple data warehouses, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
might see like one team uses Amazon's S3 for something, right? So they're ingesting. They might need a Google sheet made for a report, or they use Snowflake for something like just their main data warehouse. We can actually manage the data there. We can even pull it from one and send it to the other. We're very much a data operations product. And so that's what we've heard in the marketplace that people need. Sometimes they don't even know what data warehouse they want to use tomorrow. They might want to switch, and we're like, cool, that's fine, because we can actually configure it to just flow over there in one day. That's what we do. So that's the sort of difference with Switchboard. We flip that paradigm around where it's data warehouse first, and then
It,
everything is pivoted around that.
it feels like glue. Like
Mhm,
you're the
mhm,
glue to
mhm.
kind of connect all of these particular pieces so that we can get, again, that's the part, right? Like every organization right now, and we're going to talk again like where the state of publishing, right? But they're coming up, but there's a part of it of going, publisher's job is to get this data and be a data-driven company.
Yeah,
And if you're struggling to get the data, you're
yeah,
already off to a bad start, right? Then you got to get, and then of course you're going to have multiple data sources and all these particular pieces. And
yep.
so there's an aspect of bringing some technology and some expertise to that particular thing so that you're
Mhm.
quicker to market with data-driven solutions. Is
Absolutely.
it sounds right.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, Rob, like I think we've had this conversation in the past where it's like I've said that like we're a company that turns you in to a data-driven company. I've kind of stopped saying that because that's what does that mean exactly? But it does really mean like having a unified place for data. And I'll say one more thing about it before I flip back over here, which is, we talked about this too, like regulatory frameworks and like keeping track of your data and security. That's what we're focusing on. So having all your data in one place and not siloed is a big advantage to some publishers, right? That's what they're looking for. What's the flip side? Well, the flip side is that you have to have a data warehouse, right? So that it kind of forces you to be in that position. We do have a team that helps maintain the data warehouse if you need that, but that you kind of touched on earlier. There's pros and cons to it, right? But I think most publishers are going toward that unified data warehouse, and that's what we try to enable.
Yep, and
Um,
one thing I
Please.
was going to ask you just real quickly, just because the usage of the word, you got to understand that most people in operations and whatever are now amateur privacy compliance attorneys.
Mhm,
It's
mhm.
something that again we all have to do, and so the word regulatory, there may be someone with a little bit of a nervous twitch right now
Yeah,
because you're
yeah.
using that word. Define when you say that again, you are helping manage that regulatory that is really about the the data itself. I just want to
Mhm.
make sure, like, just spell it out, like,
Yeah.
make that one really easy for me.
Yeah, the way I say it, this is the easy way that I say it. Regulatory compliance is a test of how well you control and manage your data. And I think the reason publishers sometimes, everybody does, gets worried, and they should, is because it's not easy at a glance to see where everything is and like to know where everything is. It's just the challenge for any business, every business. If you were a logistics company, you'd have the same challenge. And so regulatory compliance is all about like, where's your data? Who has access? Like all of these things. And I'll show you this in a second, but what Switchboard does is it allows you to kind of figure that out. Like that, if everything is run and guided in Switchboard. Actually, maybe we can talk as we're talking
Yes,
about it.
please.
I'll show you.
I've stopped you from demoing, and it's the one thing I asked you to do, so I'm going to
No
stop.
problem. So I'll go through a couple of those quick things, and I'll even I'll get maybe a little more technical than we should be on this call, but I'll show you
Go
in a
for
second.
it. Go
So
for
we
it.
monitor in and out, like all the data we're monitoring coming in. We can show you exactly where it came from, which credentials were used. I know this is like a big log, but essentially, if you really need to know where your log level impressions from Google have come from, we can show you, right? It's all here logged. We have metadata for everything. We can even take this metadata and send it to your data warehouse if you want. But it's like down to the file and when we found it, and you can even see how many rows, and you can download samples, and all of this is kind of being monitored. And this is just basic stuff, but it's what you need. I can tell you what happened on August 5th of last year. If you had data flowing, what was there and where it came from and who's credentialed. Same with like sending data back to the data warehouse. Everything, all the data for a certain table in say your BigQuery came from a source. We can tell you exactly the moment it came in and how many rows. And so what we allow is that kind of how do I say, like monitoring and logging the metadata for everything. So for example, if you have a regulatory question and you're like, what happened last year on this certain date? I can tell you exactly what happened. I know I'm going a little fast, but I'm just covering some of this
Yeah,
stuff.
please.
Another thing that really is challenging for people is who has access to what. And I know a lot of companies have this stuff, but we have a, uh, you know, um, basically like a password manager built into Switchboard. And it allows you to go in and see like whose credential was used for what, right? And so it's a wizard-based thing. I mean, this is what you expect, but we can connect to some of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of data sources that we have are all based in here. So if you're connecting to Google, for example, you can see like whose credential was used. We don't share any passwords or anything. It's all secure and encrypted. But the point is, this is a very common, like, who has access to my PubMatic? What am I connected to? Did they leave the company and the thing broke? I mean, these are basic questions that we can show. and manage. So this is just another example of like how we put everything in a box. So some of those monitoring and trust questions go away. Yeah, and one of the things I think what's really interesting about Switchboard is how we manage data sources. So data sources are complicated, right? Like think of Facebook. There's like infinity amount of things you can pull from that report, or Google Ad Manager. Everybody knows how much stuff is there. Switchboard has, now this is really technical, it's kind of opening the hood and seeing the engine. The reason we're so fast at hooking up large data sets is because we have a template system. We call them recipes. So it's not just a single, you don't just connect to Google Ad Manager, it's like one little button. We are actually building those buttons with different templates, and that's going to be a new release coming out. But behind the scenes, we're kind of like, think of us more like a Salesforce. We can configure anything. Customers do have the ability to configure, or we have a team that helps set that up. And we call those recipes, and you can see behind the scenes. This is like opening up the hood, what we're actually pulling. And if we need to make rapid changes, we can make them. We can publish them. This is kind of like a Google Doc, and we can backfill immediately. So this is why we're so fast. Or we can like have 50 of these running, 50 different reports. And some of our customers do have 50 different reports pulling from Google Ad Manager all at once. And they're all different. They're all managed. So you never have to ask, like, what is going on with this report? I can tell you exactly what's going on with this report. So I'll pause there, but that's why we're able to manage things at scale so effectively.
Yeah, the last thing that you're saying in terms of again there being 50 reports out of like all of this and so forth is again you're getting and solving for the one source of truth on which all of these particular pieces.
Mhm.
And I will admit many report that I have created that someone asked me how I did it and it's like
Yep.
uh yeah, I know I should I pivot tabled this and copied that away. And again, I'm talking about little small things, right? But there's this aspect again of just getting that control. And it sounds like again, if you are a big publisher,
Uh-huh.
right? And across many departments trying to use again one source of truth, this allows you to kind of manage those particular pieces. The other thing about a big organization and publishing in general is you're diversifying revenue sources and your business as it is. And so this
Yes.
is less just how do I get my numbers out of pre-bid or Google AdX.
Mhm.
You are literally going, I've got event data, I've got CRM, I've got all of these particular things. And so talk maybe a little bit about that particular aspect of like how someone who's diversified their revenue or is thinking about that would be able to use Switchboard to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll stay on the screen, even though it's a little technical, just to show you. So Switchboard can connect to things that are not ad tech. So one example is Google Analytics. This comes up a lot. And one of the things people want to do is merge their viewership or their audience data with their revenue data in different ways. So Switchboard not only can connect to those data sources, but we can also do things in the system. And this is going to get really technical, but I'll just use it as an example. We can do things like join the data together. So we can have streams where we're joining, again, this is just a demo, but we're joining Google Analytics to Live Intent to Salesforce to create a report. And then that's all managed in the system. So like the last thing I'll say about this is the advantage to Switchboard is you don't have code running on an Excel sheet and then some Tableau thing. I mean, we can support that if you want it. But in terms of these reports that need to be like rigorously managed, we keep them in Switchboard. You can actually run all this in Switchboard. So this is the kind of like the advantage is once you get the data in and regulated, I guess, with these business rules. And again, you don't have to like look at this every day. This is just what's running behind the scenes. But this is how we are able to manage that. And you just mentioned things that I think was really interesting to see. Like I made some business rules and I don't remember what happened. We keep the history of everything. So it's almost like a revision history. If you're a techie, you might think of like GitHub, as a place to keep that. But we have our own internal version of that. And so we can keep the history of everything that's like going through. So I can tell you exactly who broke something. And if you want to, if you make a change and you say, oh, I want to go back to my old business rules, you can republish from there. It's just like a Google Doc history or an Excel online history. So a very powerful kind of thing there. Um, the other thing I'll say is once those reports are managed in the data warehouse, then we can talk about analytics. I don't know if it's a good time, Rob, to kind of flip over to
Please.
some of that other stuff. But what we do, again, it's different. We don't have a dashboard first and then send the data second. We flip that around. So we're managing the data. And then using that well-regulated data, we can do the dashboards, right? So this is more of what you tend to see. Behind the scenes, the system is running. It's alerting you if there are any problems. It's making sure the data is good. And then the result is this. The really hardcore, granular, detailed publisher dashboards for campaign delivery, revenue at risk, daily pacing. All of this stuff is governed by rules you can see. And if you wanted to change them or customize them, that's the power of Switchboard. And I could get into these, but publishers know exactly what this stuff is. It's first and third party campaign analytics. This is the new stuff we're launching as a first party analytics tool, to sit on top of the data we manage. When we started, most of our customers had their own reports and their own reporting teams. And as we grow, we're finding more opportunities to share some of our best practices with the data sets we have with everybody else. And that's
And
where we're
that's
going.
and that's the part I was going to ask you. Looking at the back end
Hmm.
was again looking again. You offer support on that front to help build those out. And again, as you work with more things, essentially, there's more recipes and there's more knowledge there to kind of speed up that process, right? Because I think
Yes.
that that's the part that I think most publishers struggle with is give me a blank page and I'll never get to it. But if you give me
Yes.
something to start with, then I can begin to go like, well, is that really how I want to see it? Is that, and those are good
Mhm.
questions, right? How
Right.
how do I run my business, and just giving them the numbers and then starting to dive into those particular things allow you to get to like, let's go this particular direction and so
Mhm.
forth.
Absolutely. Yeah, that
Yeah,
that thing that you just said is really interesting because those templates I showed you, again, I don't expect people to know everything about those templates. That's our best practices. But one thing we've seen with every publisher, whether it's the largest publishers in the industry or the smallest ones we work with, there's always something custom that falls outside of a normal report. I won't name this publisher, but we have a publisher with a custom OMS, right? They don't use the typical OMS they have, and it's just because of a legacy, right? So, but we need to work with that. So
right.
Switchboard can connect to all kinds of stuff, files. We can connect to an email report. We can connect to random SQL servers, etc. So we use some of those, generic connectors to pull that data in, and then we have our own parsing rules that are built from those recipes. Now, that's really difficult to do without data engineers. It's difficult to do if you don't have that type of platform, but that's what our platform does. And then we have another customer with a similar use case that has to do a lot of parsing of the key value pairs from Google Ad Manager logs. I mean, if you just say that to an engineer, they'll go, "Oh, it's crazy." We have a recipe for that. It's great. So we just like do it. And those are use cases where our platform really shines. That's another thing we're good at, customization. So, and it's not hard customization, it's regulated recipe based customization. And that's where our CSE team comes in to help. If you don't have the tech team to do it, we can work with you and do that. So sort of similar to like having a Salesforce admin on staff, right? They do all that hard stuff with Salesforce. You don't have to worry about it and you get the UI. We kind of do that.
Kind of do that. And in the data area, yeah. And I think, and it feels to me like a great opportunity. One of the things that um, I feel is in some cases, operations people have a different view of what's going on than obviously sales, obviously,
Mhm.
other than audience growth, analytics teams, and whatever. And one of the issues that happens there is that, and again, you tell me if this is a wrong thing, because I've never worked at a company of a size that had this issue. But here's where
Mhm.
I'd go with this, which is operations wants these kind of reports, marketing wants these kind of reports, these kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
as a the analytics team just goes, well, then we'll just use Tableau.
Yes.
And in the kind of process, you kind of just generalized everything, and no one quite gets the detail or the pieces that you want.
Hmm.
And I'll just say it again. I'm saying this from the view of what you've shown is get all the data. Don't let
Yes.
data amount of data scare you from getting the data. Get the
Right.
data.
Yes.
Then there's this aspect of, again, get it right, right? Get it in the right form, right in the right thing, and then you can start to build these things out. And then again, that you didn't jump on the one source of truth. Like you
Right.
didn't go like, yeah, there it is, Rob. But
There's a
there's
reason
this
why,
piece
but
of it,
yeah.
right? But there's a piece of it of like getting in that direction so that when you are parsing this out, and again, people seeing it, the business through their lens, to me
Yeah.
is a very important thing.
You touched on something that I've been trying to retire this catchphrase because I overuse it, but I always used to say, make your data a benefit, not a liability. Because publishers get this a lot where like, oh, one more SSP, one more whatever, like source of revenue. It's like, oh, how do I deal with this? And what I found using Switchboard is I'd come into meetings with our customers and they'd say, oh, we have this new SSP. And I'd say, no problem. And it would just work, right? We just add it and,
Right.
and we'd scale up and suddenly it was like, oh, cool, let's add more. And that feeling is really, I think that's a change a lot in knowing I'm a data company, right? It's when you go, give me more data rather than uh-oh, data, because that's happened in publishers. And the reason I don't say single source of truth, it is true that Switchboard provides like single business rule source of truth, but we've seen people use, some people need Snowflake for something, some people need S3 for something, right? Your data warehouse team wants to archive everything, and maybe they're using Google Cloud Storage or something.
Right, right,
Whereas,
right.
yeah, you just said it. Like, I want to use Tableau plus Switchboard or for Snowflake or Tableau plus whatever, BigQuery. And yeah, we should say yes to that as well. One of the cool things that you reminded me of, I love going into a customer meeting using Switchboard, and we have people from different departments who haven't spoken to each other in the meet. I love that, where it's like revenue ops needs something and marketing ops needs something, and they both use Switchboard and they're talking to each other. That's a great feeling. That's what data unification really, really means. I love it
Eh,
when that happens.
that's the well, and again, I don't know if some of our audience will have heard this so
Mhm.
many times, right? Like, but I always have this image of the CEO and all the department heads, and the CEO goes, "As of today, we are a data-driven company," and everyone goes, "Huzzah!" And then they go off and do exactly what they were doing before, because they were
Yeah,
using data, they just
yeah.
weren't using it together. And I'll even
Hmm.
say that I've heard publishers even getting kind of a role of like a translator, someone that literally goes around to the departments to try to understand that. And there's this piece again of like the technology should do some of this work, right? And just
Right.
kind of
Mhm.
pull those that kind of things together and so forth. Um, I mean, I kind of feel like we've covered a lot. I'm sure
Yeah.
going like I'm not sure, Michael. Like I have other. I mean, when we talked earlier, there were a couple different things here, but I'm like I kind of feel like to me you alluded to new features and so forth, and I kind of feel like maybe that's. Think about it this way. How about this? I'm going to give you a very difficult question to answer, or you're going to have to
Mhm.
sort through this, right? Which is right now for publishers. And again, one thing to point out, little side tangent on my own question is you work with more than just ad tech. I don't know if you
Yeah.
want to dive into that, but that's an important thing to understand, right? That it's you're not just
Yeah.
born into this. This is an application upon that. So maybe one
Uh-huh.
that could be part A.
Yeah.
Part B is we know publishers need to change how they run their businesses,
Hmm.
and they need
Yeah.
to be data driven. We kind of made fun of that, but there's a piece of going like, but it's true. And more digital companies than publishing companies is the way that I almost kind of frame that.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
three, the future. What are some of the things that you're thinking about? By all
Mhm.
means, my friend, take that three-parted question and weave it into your answer.
Yeah, I'll answer that three-headed monster because it's actually all the same answer, I think. So the first question was around like what else do we do for use cases? And the answer is you can tell we didn't start with like we're an ad tech company. We started we're a data company. And so our platform can be used for lots of things. I just showed you the Google Analytics example. We've been doing a lot with performance marketing, which for those of you who don't know, that's the kind of marketing that's usually digital and it's paid for by impressions, clicks, or conversions, right? So very similar to paid campaign if you're just a
Sure.
publisher.
Yeah.
And so the data is pretty complex, right? So it's like things like Facebook ads. If you've ever touched that report, it's insane. TikTok ads is a big one, right? Google, Google's ads, YouTube, all of those things fall into that category. So the funny thing about that is I'm starting to notice publishers doing both. Or maybe they always have, right? And just those teams haven't spoken to each other. E-commerce is another one. We actually have a bunch of e-commerce connectors. Like we have a really great Amazon orders connector if you're just a random, Amazon seller. And I've found that sometimes publishers will diversify their revenue with e-commerce, right? You see that all the time, or events, right? You see that all the time. I'm sure you've done that a lot, like Rob, with
Yeah.
your work. It's like you're doing all of that stuff. And so we can do it. Like it's just another connector, it's another recipe. We can merge the data together, we can put them in the same data warehouse. So we're seeing a lot of that going on. And that's where publishing is going too. I would also say that other people are looking more like publishers. You know this, retail media is a great example, right?
Yes.
You have a web store that's really popular, you can run ads or things that look like ads. It kind of looks the same from a data perspective, right? It's a bunch of really complicated SSPs. Often the data is huge. You need to manage it. And sometimes there's new players in there that don't have an API and it's some weird JSON file they're sending you and you need to deal with it, right? And that's another place where we're seeing growth there. And like so the last thing is let's talk about I don't know if we should talk about this, but let's talk about cookies. A lot of these companies
I
sorry, it's
yeah. Well, Michael, I'm gonna let you know the word's already out. Okay,
it's
that they're
cool.
going away. Just so you're not
They're going
breaking
okay.
news here.
I
But
just
there's a
don't,
part of like,
it's
well, yeah.
dramatic.
I
It's
know it's like
dramatic.
one of those topics. Like, do we really want
We want to
to go
talk
there?
about it. But I have a positive thing to say about it, which is, you often like it's like, okay, I need to deal with first party data finally. It's and what does that mean? What does that look like? And that's another place we're seeing opportunity for switchboard and growth, which is like, okay, I do have a first party data set. It's from X, Y, and Z, and I need to pull it in. And we're like, cool, we're gonna just work with you to make sure it's in your data warehouse. It's your data. You didn't want to deal with it because it's hard, but you have to now because cookies are going away someday, right? And that's that. So it's all kind of the same question. It's just about publishing is always going to exist. It's just how do we pay for it, right? What's the best way to pay for it, make it efficient? And it's diversification, it's first party data, it's all of this stuff. And it's actually I'll say one last thing. It's the cost of data processing and management has to go down. Like you just can't find data engineers anywhere. Like they're all working for other
Yep,
companies, right? You need to do something, and that's where automation comes in. So it's sort of all the same answer to the three questions.
got it. Though I'm going to reframe on the last piece of it, just in case, just again, because you are more than ad tech and you are more than just working with large publishers and just the big data and so forth. What is some of the roadmap for
Yeah.
Switchboard, either whether that be features or positioning company wide? Like, what are some of the things that you want to accomplish next?
Yeah. I'll show you. Let me show you a quick one. I opened up like
Please.
a beta, kind of demo thing. So I'll show you a
Okay,
quick
we
one.
like that.
This is, it's not super exciting, but the first thing we're doing, you saw that recipe stuff and it looks a little techy. We're actually making it simpler. And so we're expanding a lot of our self-service. I'll show you this is one of the smartest features of the switchboard, but it looks like very simple in the UI because we made it that way. Automatic backfill. So this is like one of the hardest things. You go to your data engineers and you tell them, I need data from 2 years ago for this certain thing. They'll go, oh, come on, don't make us do all that. We have to test it and run. Switchboard is smart, right? So we have those recipes, and so the robot behind the scenes you automate. You pick a date range, you pick a source. Let's pick, I don't know, whatever, Google Analytics, and it says, here's the data flow you want, which things do you want to backfill? You pick off the chart, you go next, and you hit launch, and it just goes and backfills it. It'll start running and do its thing, and your data will be up to date, right? If you need to do that. So this is an example of the kind of thing we're adding. I'm really excited about some of the wizards. So a lot of other platforms that look like ours are like more point and click. You click something, you send it to. So we've avoided that. Why? Because we have such complex data flows, and it's like we can't put everything. But not anymore. We're starting to put in, some of more of these kind of like data. So you click on it, pick the ad, click it. The standard recipe behind the scenes is created. You don't have to worry about all those details I showed you. But if you need to customize it, you can. That'll still be there. So we're working on a lot of the self-service stuff, and then to do more enterprise stuff like those recipes, sync them to GitHub. We're doing more of that, like just connecting to things better. That's the thing we're doing on the core platforms, but basically taking what we're doing and making it easier to use, just to give more people opportunity to use it. And then the other thing we're doing, very, if you don't mind, just really
Please.
briefly, we're doing more and more of these things that we call them modules, but they're basically, like I showed you, a campaign. We also have a really detailed programmatic dashboard, which does all the things you want, right? It's like, open versus private, share of voice, comparison between TAM and GAM and your SSPs or your pre-bid, like all of the above, because we can pull in that very granular data. So we're actually working with a lot of customers with this report that's just ready to go. We can turn it on immediately, but it uses all of that stuff behind the scenes. So the data is very monitored and trustworthy and big if you need it. And we can add customizations as well. So we're kind of doing both at the same time. More and more of these dashboards, more of the analytics out of the box, and then making our other side of the house, the core platform, just easier to use and faster to set things up. That's it in a nutshell where we're going with that stuff. I could talk a little bit about some of the machine learning stuff, but that's kind of something that I'll share maybe in a future
Yeah, why don't
video.
we do a part two when we get
Yep.
in that? Because again, I think that's something to kind of explore, whatever.
Yep.
I'm going to make a statement, Michael. Good Lord, you get excited about data. and
Yeah.
all this stuff. You're having fun like with this. That's the part that kind of comes out of this is that you're just like going like, yeah, yeah, give me some more, and I'm gonna sit there and
Can
figure
I
that.
tell you a secret, Rob? I tell it people all the time. I do get excited, but it's not that I love data. I love the robot dealing with the data. Like I don't want to deal with the data. I want the rope. So I get excited when I get the robots to do it, right? The platform. That's what gets me excited. I
And
know that sounds weird, but
there's a
that's true.
little, yeah, there's a little evil overlord in there. I'm just gonna put that out there, Michael. When you
Yeah,
sit there and say, "I want to control all the robots to make them go do the
so
stuff," I'm just gonna put that out there, like take that out. But there is a piece to that again, like of all those things. It's and this has been a real fun conversation. And Michael, thanks for
absolutely.
kind of diving into this and so forth. And this is what First Impressions is all about, is having these kind of conversations. So Michael, thank you for that, Switchboard for this, and
Yeah.
thanks to all you that watched. And actually, Michael, last question. I didn't prep you for this, but I hope you're ready. If someone wants to talk to Switchboard, who do they call or where do they go? Do you even
Yeah.
know, Michael? You're the CTO. Which
Yeah.
robots should they talk to?
Just go to switchboard-software.com and there's a bunch of ways to reach out to us.
All right,
Or
great.
find us on LinkedIn. Same thing.
We'll put something on the note underneath it of an email address and so forth like that. But
Absolutely.
anyway, Michael, thank you so much for your time, and everyone, thanks for tuning in. This has been fun. Thank you.
Great. Always a pleasure, Rob.